David in New Jersey. And the note that I have here from the call screener, David, is where do we stand on the flat Earth? So I guess you want to talk more about some flat Earth stuff, right, David?
Yeah, it looks like maybe that got a chuckle. I don't know if that was live or not, but how you guys doing?
Doing all right, man.
Darn good. Thank you.
Talking about all kinds of stuff tonight, so you lay it on me.
Cool. I guess I'll start with, I found your channel, I think, recently because of, I think one of your videos you guys had labeled something with Flat Earth in it. So I somehow stumbled upon you. As you know, the algorithms aren't so helpful anymore.
No. They're wicked beasts.
And then what struck me, I really like in the background how you have the open-minded, and you promote that meme. And it's funny because I used to consider myself, I'm 48 years old, and
I remember
for
48.
46 years. Excuse me?
I remember 48.
That's funny. That's funny, and I feel old. So anyhow, I remember, for 46 years of my life, I considered myself open-minded. And you guys ever read a website called Peace of Mindful? Have you ever seen that one?
Peace of Mindful. I'm not sure that I have.
I don't think I have.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd ask. But on it, it's a quick story, but it's on the changing of minds, it's called. Have you guys ever heard this? Real quick. I remember once it was in a bar during the 1930s, and there was a drunken debate going on that was trending on towards violence when something so unusual happened that everyone froze in place. The silence was like a soft winter snow falling in the woods. Everyone looked on in wonder. A guy sitting in the corner and surrounded by empty and half-full glasses of beer announced that he was persuaded by the logic of his opponent to change his mind on a subject. It had never happened before. It has never happened since. Do you like that?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's interesting. I'm looking at this. Is it peaceofmindful.com?
Yes.
Okay, so I have found the right one. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's about 4 stories down. It says it's on the headline is on the changing of minds. But I just found that one recently, and I was like, wow. I was like, that literally, I believed I was open-minded for 46 years of my life. And when it came down to it, if somebody had asked me, what makes you so sure that you're open-minded? Who has changed your mind ever in your life that makes you consider that you're open-minded? If somebody would have confronted me with that, I don't even know if I would have listened to them, but I know for certain I had nothing to prove it.
Yeah.
So I'd ask you guys, what makes you guys so sure you're open-minded, just out of curiosity? And by the way, I'm not trying to point a finger, but what makes you so confident?
Fantastic question, David. I'm so glad you asked that. What a great question to ask. I will say for myself, I would have called myself open-minded until a couple of years ago. So my big takeaway that most people know me by is there's a video of me being a Christian on a Christian campus having a conversation with atheist Anthony Magnabosco, and we talked about religion and stuff, and mostly it was him asking me questions about my religious beliefs.
Oh, wow.
And, I'm an atheist now, so that's a big transition in my life and how that happened.
Agree.
So I went from pretty religious Christian to atheist talk show host, right? And so that's a transition I can mark to, and along with other kind of political beliefs that kind of followed in suit with that, I'd say I definitely leaned more right than I do now. And so there's kind of a cascading effect of different changes that happened with that. So that's my one claim to saying, hey, I was open-minded about this and I changed my mind. I maybe I could think of some minor examples, but that's probably the biggest thing in my life that I'd say.
This was rather recent that this happened to you, Dan?
I was 19 years old when I had that conversation. I'm 23 now. So
so it was a little farther back than because I've had the opportunity to talk to Anthony, and he's such a sweetie.
Yeah, he's the best. He's super cool. But it wasn't just that conversation with him. I've talked about this a lot of times. But really, it was a combination of things, talking of other conversations with people, doing my own research, trying to figure out what's true, talking to Christians and atheists alike, trying to, figure this thing out for myself. And I hope that the conclusion I come to now is tentative and that I'm open to changing my mind on that. At least I tried to. And that's what kind of inspired this show, was having, open conversations just like the one that I had a few years ago, and trying to continue that in a call-in show format. So,
nice. Good for you, man.
Yeah,
good
that's
for you.
That's right. So, I'm sure Diana has some stories as well about changing her mind. And
well, I try to be as open-minded as I can without my brain falling out.
Yeah.
One of the things that leads me to believe that I am truly working on being open-minded is the degree to which I second guess myself. It's always a case of, okay, here's what I'm believing, here's my position, but wait a minute. Is that really the position to have? And why do I have it? And should I have it? It even extends to my identity. There's not a day that goes. There's not a day that goes by that I don't question. Was transitioning the really right thing to do? That sort of thing. So if it's that close to home, hopefully that means I'm trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you guys, I mean, I feel the same way. But who knows whether or not I'm just confirming my own beliefs, though. But it sounds similar to how I feel on a daily basis. I'm like, man, I go out and I do flat earth activism. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I hope this evidence is good evidence. Mm. I found it to be persuasive. I know that you guys, I don't think, feel the same way, which I can appreciate. I think you probably have done some investigation on it. I doubt if all the things that you've told me, you must have applied that to your flat earth investigation before coming up with your conclusion that, I'm wrong, I guess it would be the way I put it.
Sure.
Yeah, I know quite a few people whose performance in their jobs depended upon the earth being a sphere, depended upon the heliocentric view of the solar system. I know quite a few people who, and you're going to love this, who worked or still do work at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and in doing their job, had the Earth been flat and they were trying to work on a spherical Earth, what they were trying to do would never have worked, and they would have killed people. So, it's one of the things that contributes. Not the only thing, but one of them.
Yeah, no, I guess like a very like a nice starter point for me is, how do you reconcile, like seriously, because I don't understand this whatsoever, how anybody can reconcile that as of 1972, it's been almost 50 years since that last moon landing. And
sadly.
Have you guys watched that video with like the astronaut Don Pettit? And in the video, the astronaut guy, he says, Don Pettit says, regarding going back to the moon, he says, and it's on video, he says, we lost that we destroyed that technology, and we don't have the ability to build it back any longer.
Okay, now what he was talking about there is we cannot build another Saturn V. We cannot build another Apollo spacecraft. We have indeed lost that technology. I think a lot of the blueprints are gone, that sort of thing. But that is not to say that we cannot build something even better than we had back in the late 1960s. Well,
actually, it is, because what he says is, I would go back to the moon in a nanosecond, he says. So he is saying that we don't have any technology to go to the moon. He's not saying it's just the technology that they, quote, somehow destroyed for some reason that we don't know, right? He's saying, I would go back in a nanosecond, but blah, blah, blah. So he's literally saying there is no way to accomplish that right now. And I mean, if you're going to say that that's because there is no Saturn V missile, standing in the waiting, I'm not going to argue with you. But to say that technology hasn't progressed
hold on.
That point.
Well, what we've lost.
Let me ask this, Dave, because I'm confused, because if he's saying going back to the moon, like he's saying he's been there, so obviously the technology was at least there, at least in the context, right?
That's an assumption, right? I've never been there. You've never been there. If they're lying and he's in part of the lie, then of course he's going to. I even use it mistakenly in my own. Excuse me for cutting you off, but you follow what I'm saying? Like I even use going back because that's what everybody assumes.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out because I haven't seen the original video, right? I don't know his exact verbiage there, but that would be kind of confusing to me.
You can look it up right now. It's literally, you
unfortunately,
can still find that.
We can't play videos while we're doing the live stream here.
Right.
But
what we have lost, I will say this up one side and on the other, we have lost the will. We have no idea in mind about what we want to do in the realm of space exploration. We have
How do you know that?
idea.
Who are you speaking for that you can say that so confidently? I didn't ever really have the will or not have the will. Who now are you specifically speaking for a NASA administration?
Well, I'm speaking of the friends of mine who work at NASA at the various facilities. They are very, very frustrated.
And they're in charge of NASA going to the moon?
Not of the moon program. They're at various facilities doing various things.
So how are you confident we have lost the will?
Because the whole political environment.
Or are you just supporting? No, honestly, because really you don't have any facts to say that you know for a fact that the reason we haven't gone back to the moon, you're just using that to support your current belief, I believe. Wouldn't you have to agree with that?
There's the possibility that is the case.
Cool.
I personally think it's a small possibility, but there is that possibility. Yeah, it's now the thing is, the other thing, do we want to go back to the moon or do we want to do something else where we can learn more? That's another question to ask.
With that, I would say, how about rattling off all the benefits we've received as society for spending $56 million per day with NASA for like the last freaking 50 years? I like to look at it that we could literally help 1 million people who are homeless and dirt poor. We could give those people, and not to say that I'm all for socialism and whatever, but literally, what would have more benefit for society in my mind?
Here's the thing.
I heard that argument back in the 60s.
Well, yeah, we don't. That money doesn't just get dumped in a garbage bin somewhere. That goes into the economy. We're paying people to do jobs. They're building things. They're transporting things. I mean, they are doing.
They're potentially lying to us too, though, right? Isn't that a possibility?
Well, there's always going to be the potential that a government is lying to us in some way. But I've been to Huntsville. I've seen the replica Saturn V rocket. I've been to Houston. I've seen the stuff that they are doing on there. I don't have any reason to believe
that. Have you seen the lunar lander?
The lunar lander. I've seen the model of the lunar lander. I certainly haven't seen the real thing.
Have you ever seen photos? You got to look at the photos of the lunar lander up close. There's one video of the lunar lander when it takes off from the moon, and the entire side of the lander literally blows out, and you can see it blow out it destroyed the entire side. Mm-hmm. But there's no mention of it.
So
I do know.
I mean, you guys know because you believed in Christianity and you switched and now you're an atheist. So I know that you are able to. I mean, what you had to be able to overcome to come to a different belief like that is not easy.
Yeah. And David, you should know that yourself as well. I'm presuming you at once believed that the Earth was round and that NASA was
46 years of my life.
Yeah,
right.
and that NASA was an entity to be trusted. So that's going to happen more than just a single conversation here, right? For sure.
Yeah.
But just to get the ground running, right? Just to even get started with a conversation like this, we might be coming from two different vantage points as far as what kind of assumptions we make about how our government works and how maybe science works. And so there's a lot of individual issues that we could look at and see. I see that, maybe your approach right now is you want to talk to us about specific claims that NASA has made or specific, observations that we can make about NASA that we can test whether or not are true. And I think that's an interesting angle. But if the topic that we want to talk about is flat Earth, I think we can broaden that a little bit more. I think
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I can tell you one issue or ask you a question that will help me right now determine the likelihood of your ability to actually research this in a good manner, or at least somewhat. When did you guys first look into flat Earth?
I mean, the flat Earth thing for me, this started probably a few years ago, probably when most people were getting caught. I don't know, 2016 onward maybe is probably when I first really started hearing about it. What would you say, Diana?
For me, it was also recently because I recently got involved in. I was actually one of the people who was doing some of the debunking I've spoken of the movie night previously, and Strike. Working with that is where I got involved in debunking the flat Earth, and that's been just the past couple of years.
So, did you go to work right away in debunking flat Earth? Like you had an agenda that it was wrong from the beginning?
Well, at the very first I heard it, it was, no, this can't be right. If this is right, then every bit of physics I have learned in the previous, 30 years is absolutely wrong. And then I started looking at it. And part of the debunking is looking at it and trying to verify it. And it's not immediately running in and saying, no. It's no was the first knee-jerk reaction I had. And then after that, it's okay, am I justified in saying no? And I did come to the conclusion, so far, yes, I've been justified. And notice I say so far.
Yeah.
Maybe something will come up where it turns out that the Earth really is flat and we can actually prove it. Now, I rather doubt that's going to happen, but what if it does? And if it does, I have to change my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have no choice.
And here's what I'll say about that. I personally haven't seen enough evidence of a flat Earth to convince me of that position. And if we're putting things on the scale, to me, it's just the round Earth just has. It weighs a bit more. I mean, I mentioned a few minutes ago, I got the opportunity to go to Huntsville this year to see where they built the Saturn rocket. And the Huntsville Space Center out there is really cool. You can actually talk to some people. They have volunteers who used to work at NASA.
You can visit Santa Claus. You can visit Santa Claus, too, and he can have a big home and everything. It doesn't necessarily prove that he's real, right?
Well, if I'm visiting Santa Claus, then that would prove that he was real, right? Like if I actually got to visit Santa Claus.
No, I'm using an analogy like as a little kid, you can go and you can see Santa's house that they put up in the mall, and they tell you that, and you go, there it is, and the kid goes, yeah, that's real.
Well, talking to a scientist about jet propulsions on the Saturn V rocket, I mean, this is the cool thing. This is what I was trying to get to, right? At Huntsville, like they have the former NASA workers that come volunteer, and they come talk about some of the projects that they've gotten to do.
So you're lucky enough to have met some of those folks as well.
Yeah, if the conspiracy. Well, let me ask you this, David, because
the matter here. David, let me get to this actually.
David, I mean, you can build the conspiracy up more and more and say that these people are paid actors, but like, where does it end? Wait. Well,
all right, I hear you. But just because something seems impossible to you doesn't mean it necessarily is. True. With that, I would ask you, what firsthand evidence do you guys each have, that firsthand knowledge that tells you that you live on a spinning ball, not NASA?
Oh boy. Now that's I'm going to call that a fallacy, because not every one of us can obtain that first-hand evidence. Not every one of us can go halfway between the moon and the Earth and look at the Earth out there as a ball of rock.
So what we can do. Let me start with this. You guys, they tell us we're spinning, right? You guys know how fast we're spinning at the equator?
But 360 degrees in 24 hours.
Speed is relative, though. That's not like the only reason.
But my question isn't what we're relative or not. The question is that we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. We're circling the sun at supposedly 66,000 miles an hour, while the sun travels through space supposedly at 500,000 miles an hour.
Correct.
My question to each of you would be: do you feel even the slightest bit of motion, and have you ever?
This is a misunderstanding, and this is a misunderstanding of how physics is. Okay, so if I'm talking about a car moving 60 miles an hour, okay, that's because it's
in a circle?
Listen, please listen. Okay, David, if I'm talking about a car that's moving 60 miles an hour, okay, that's relative to me. If I was moving 40 miles an hour in the same direction, then that car is going to be moving 20 miles an hour relative to me, right? You would agree that if I had a speedometer and if I was in another car going 40 miles an hour and I checked out that other car, it would be saying it's going 20 miles an hour from me, right? Do you agree with me?
Wait, let me ask you, let me get this. Actually, let's get this. Like, like, let me start with this. You guys, they tell us we're spinning, right? You guys know how fast we're spinning?
It would be saying it's going 20 miles an hour from me, right?
Well, you're using an analogy that's a
But
false
David,
analogy,
do you
aren't you?
agree
Because
with me, though?
if
Do you
you're
agree with
orbiting-
me?
If we're
Do you
supposedly orbiting the,
do
if
you
we're
agree
orbiting
with
the
me,
sun, though,
David?
It's a circular.
David,
You know, it's
you
a
can
circular,
bring your
it's a
argument to
circular
me if you
path.
want, but you have to finish out my analogy first. All right, it's only fair. Okay.
Okay, yeah, sure.
If I'm going 40 miles an hour, another car is going 60 miles an hour. You agree? If I'm in that 40-mile-an-hour car and I get that speedometer, it's going to say 20 miles an hour, right? Right. Do you agree with me?
The difference between the difference between the two.
Yes, because
right?
speed is relative, okay? And
Okay,
so
that's
even
fine.
though we're going 4,000 miles an hour, whatever the number is, right? It's because
Right.
relative to us, we're moving still because we've always been moving at that speed.
Right, but I think you're missing my point. My point is that, like, let's say you get on a merry-go-round, right?
Yeah.
On a merry-go-round, like, you could be going like 3 miles. You can move a merry-go-round very slowly,
Yeah.
and you can feel that force trying to push you off of it, right?
Well, here's the other thing. Have you ever flown? Have you ever?
Wait. I let's let David finish out what he's trying to say first before we.
Okay, fine.
Jump on.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Everyone's getting crazy. I apologize. Everyone tells me I'm getting triggered, and they're correct, so I apologize, guys.
Not a problem. Not a problem. This is fun.
My point is, and I bring this up to people, is that supposedly we don't even move in a circular orbit around the sun. It is slightly elliptical, and in an elliptical orbit, you are actually having a acceleration and a deceleration that is taking place. So never do we ever feel and that acceleration or deceleration.
Well, I mean, if we're moving at a speed that's, again, if it's slight enough to where it happens, I mean, if I had a car, again, going 60 miles an hour and I slowly went down from 59, 58, 57, I mean, you wouldn't be able to feel that much either, right?
Well, here's my thing.
You would, but if you're talking about driving in an elliptical manner,
would you know the
do feel
difference
it. You
between
see it.
60 miles an hour?
Not only do you feel it, but you would see it. Like if you put a coffee on your dashboard, you would see the liquid be affected by the change, wouldn't you?
Its speed is relative, though. That's what I'm saying. Like, if the coffee mug is already moving at the same speed as the rest of us because we're all moving on the ball.
But I'm saying remember, I just said an elliptic. Listen, I'm not wanting you to agree with me. I'm just wanting you to say that, yes, that is a fact. If you're driving your car in an elliptical manner, even if you're going at a slow speed, when you start to make the change in whatever I don't know the physics to describe that in the arc, you are going to see the water have.
Yes, I agree with you there.
To that.
But, you know, a track is going to be different than the size of the Earth's orbit. Like, that's huge. Okay? And so if we're talking about two different sizes here.
Right, I agree. Momentum. But we're also talking about a much different speed, 66,000 miles an hour.
For sure.
The Earth is supposedly spinning.
Yeah.
So along with that change in size, you're getting a change in speed.
Well, Robert Hamilton says hyperskepticism, the fuel of conspiracy theorists. No, not hyperskepticism. I call it contrarianism. It's like whatever you say, it's no. David, I'm wondering, have you ever flown aboard a commercial aircraft? Okay. Do you feel the speed when you're in flight?
Not when you're just at a constant rate of constant speed. I don't think I do. No.
Do you understand that when you're in that aircraft, you're flying at about 600 miles an hour?
Sure.
And you're not feeling it.
I'm flying straight though. I'm not flying in an elliptical pattern, am I?
Again, though, but we're talking about the relative size of the bodies.
Is that true? That's not a good analogy unless you're going to put that in an elliptical pattern.
We're not talking about planets moving. We're talking about small objects on Earth. If we're talking about planet-sized objects, you got to expand this out. It is going to be different.
Okay. All right, to get away from that then. Yeah. So my point is that our senses tell us we are not moving. That you would agree with that, right? Our senses tell us we don't feel any motion.
Our senses has adapted to the current system that we're on Earth, and so it would be haywire. It wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't help us at all if we felt the movement of the Earth all the time. So yes.
Okay. So you believe in evolution then, because you're saying they have adapted?
100%.
No, I do not believe in evolution.
Yeah,
I accept. Now I'm getting triggered.
Whatever.
Okay. I accept the overwhelming evidence.
Okay. Yeah.
That supports the theory of biological evolution with
Insummation,
natural
yeah.
selection.
Yeah, for
It's
both of us.
nothing about believing in. It's
But
they are showing me how it works.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But can you prove it yourself?
Evolution?
Sure.
Yeah.
I have, yes.
That's-
I have performed many of the experiments that support.
Yeah,
You see,
it's
what I
it's
haven't
college
mentioned
genetics
tonight.
classes. Like you can do that stuff.
Yeah, what I haven't mentioned tonight because it hasn't come up.
Yeah.
I have a background in biology. I've done a lot of this work. I don't have a job in a lab, unfortunately. I was not able to complete my PhD back in the late '90s, which that's very unfortunate. I wish I could have stayed in academia, but I fell
Are
ill.
there scientists who don't agree with evolution at all? Are there any that you know of?
There are some, but they
There
all,
may be one or few. There may be a few out there.
they
but,
work at like the Creation Institute and stuff. You know.
So I guess their evidence or their. I mean, is it all creation based? That is their argument. They don't have any other
I'd
argument
say-
that would be quote scientific based.
Most
I'm
of them
asking,
are.
By the way, I don't know.
I'd say yes. So specifically, yeah. There's a lot of them that are creation based. There are some that try to bring. I guess you'd call it secular arguments to the fold when it comes to evolution. They
Right,
definitely exist,
right.
but they're the minority. It's kind of like with climate change. You know, like the majority of like climate scientists. It's like what 97%. Yeah. Like I'd say it's probably even smaller when it comes to evolution in the field of biology. But I don't know.
Okay. I'm just getting a feel for you guys.
Yeah.
Now I'm fine with that because I can't prove that that evolution isn't true or is true myself. I have no clue.
Yeah.
My next question though would be then regarding the Big Bang. Do you believe that that's a fact, or do you just believe that it's a likely scenario?
Well, let's make this the last topic of conversation because I do want to wrap things up tonight. And David, as we're kind of closing out here too, before you go, I'm going to put you in with our call screener because we definitely want to get your info so we can talk have more conversations in the future if that's something you're okay with.
Sounds wonderful.
Cool. I have a channel too. My Zoom Truth channel. I do live streaming too, so you guys would always be invited on if you ever want to come on and.
Thank you. Yeah,
cool.
beautiful.
So quick on the Big Bang, Diana. I guess you had an answer. You can go ahead first, and then I'll say my piece on it.
As far as the Big Bang goes, that is an explanation that is so far the most likely to explain how the universe, I'll use the word evolved and developed. The Big Bang is not actually an event, it's a process. The Big Bang is still going on right now. The expansion of the universe
Well, that's assuming that
Big Bang.
it's true, right?
Well, in other words, the expansion of the universe is what we're calling the Big Bang. It's a matter of definition.
Yeah.
And we can measure
if
the expansion.
You can't say you know for sure that that's a fact, then to say that you know that it's actually going on now as we speak is kind of hard to accept that. I believe it's going on right now would be a good way to put it, I think. You know?
Well, the expansion has been measured. It is measured over and over again.
Yet we can use the stars. Those stars in the sky have never moved, and the North Star has never moved.
Not true.
It's kind of
not true at all. You can
true.
you
It
can
definitely
actually
has.
observe the motion of, for example, the North Star. It is very slight, but it can indeed, with the proper instruments that are accurate enough, that are precise enough, you can actually see. It's over a period of time. It's not one night to the next.
Over how long a period of time has it been?
Oh, let's see. Say a period of decades. You can actually measure that.
Yeah.
So say
have you guys measured it?
19.
Yes.
No.
astronomy.
I've talked about this before. It is not absolutely necessary for every one of us to do the actual. Not every one of us has access to the instrumentation, for Christ's sake.
Right, but also you can measure.
At that point, you do have to accept that. Then now, when you're taking on secondhand information from
But
men
I'm not, David.
liars.
David, when I was in college, I measured the brightness and magnitude of stars, and I did this myself. I mean, you can do this in a classroom setting. You can understand these things. Yeah,
what
definitely.
Does that prove?
Yeah, you know about parallax. Yeah, I mean, this is stuff you can do yourself. You can do the calculations.
I'm quite sure that parallax has never been proven.
Parallax.
No! Oh, for fuck's no!
I don't know. That's
the unit called a parsec derives from measurement of parallax. The distance of one parsec is the distance at which the measured parallax is 1 second of arc. Parsec. And it derives from an actual measurement. And God, when it was in the 19th century that or maybe earlier that the parallax of the closest stars was measured.
Right?
Yeah, let's do it for the hell of it.
okay.
Yeah. If you Google parallax proven.
I don't know where this is going.
I
feel like
it'd be amazing to me if I've been wrong all this time, but who knows? Maybe I have been lied to.
It's definitely something to look up and consider. But we are out of time here. We have gone a bit over time for this program. So David, I'm gonna put you on with our call screeners so we can have future conversations and definitely can keep in touch. But I do want to say thank you for calling in and making this conversation and this episode.
Yeah, thank you,
super
Dave.
interesting.
Sincerely, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.